a stretch to think this could happen on Mars. But after a while, Dr. Brandenburg claimed that what happened on Mars did not happen naturally. That the only way we see isotopes of xenon-129 is from the discharge of a nuclear weapon. Now, I've read both sides of this argument, and I'm not sure who's right. But Dr. Brandenburg's Mars nuclear war theory was rejected for peer review. But that's mainstream scientists, though. They're not always correct, but they always have an agenda. Right or wrong, it's an interesting theory that deserves attention and study, not ridicule. But you can't talk about Mars without being ridiculed. So most everything we see in photographs from Mars can be explained. But there are a couple of things that can't. We've sent mission after mission to Mars, and I can't for the life of me understand why we haven't sent a rover through Cydonia and right up to the object that's supposed to be a face. NASA says there's nothing there, so it would be a waste of resources. But with all due respect to NASA, their resources come from we the people. And we the people want to know what the face on Mars really is. Now, until we have close-up photographs of Cydonia, close-up photographs that we can trust are undoctored, the story about the face on Mars is not going away.
And not as long as it generates clicks, huh?
True. And look, I completely agree that the chances of the face being an artificial structure are almost zero. But almost zero isn't zero. If there's even the slightest chance that the face and the pyramids were created by a civilization on Mars, we deserve to know. But more importantly, the people who built those monuments, they deserve to be remembered. Thank you so much for hanging out with us today. My name is AJ. You know Hecklefish.
How's it hanging?
This has been the Y-Files. If you had fun or learned anything, do us a favor, like, comment, subscribe, share. That stuff really helps the channel. And like... possible challenge to Congress.
I believe that this nation should commit itself to achieving the goal, before this decade is out, of landing a man on the moon and returning him safely to the Earth.
That challenge accelerated the space race between the United States and the Soviet Union. The first superpower to land on the moon wouldn't just plant a flag, give a speech, and grab a few moon rocks. Dominion over the moon would be a source of national pride, technical superiority, and military supremacy. By 1965, lunar probes from the US and the USSR were sending back the first pictures of the dark side of the moon. That's when the world's two greatest superpowers realized they were too late. The moon had already been claimed, just not by humans. What is it now?
I need a company credit card. It's an emergency.
Nope. Last time I let you use the...
That was made with
Please. And... PD...
Jams.
No jams. Wait, are you crushing fruit in 69, and the man referred to as the Forgotten Astronaut isn't here to touch the surface of the moon? That job belongs to Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin, who are 60 miles below. Michael Collins orbits the moon, completely alone in space.
I think you mean Michael Collins is alone in his trailer, while Neil and Buzz are on the soundstage, being dangled by wires or whatever.
Okay, we know that you think the moon landing was fake.
As phony as a $2 bill.
$2 bills are real.
You'll believe anything.
Since we're talking about what the astronauts saw on the dark side of the moon, we're gonna have to assume that they were there.
Go ahead. I like science fiction.
That's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind.
While Armstrong and Aldrin take the historic first steps for mankind, Collins heads toward the dark side, or far side of the moon. It's technically not dark at all. We just call it that because we never see it. For the next 21 hours, Collins orbits the moon alone in the command module. Radio signals can't reach Collins without line of sight to Earth. So for 47 minutes of every lunar revolution, he's completely cut off from the rest of mankind.
I am alone now. Truly alone. And absolutely isolated from any known life. I am it. If a count were taken, the score would be 3 billion plus 2 over on the other side of the moon, and 1 plus God knows what on this side.
Every time he's there, he loses all communication. Well, all human communication. In his headset, Collins hears an eerie sound.
Had I not been warned about it, it would have scared the hell out of me.
Every astronaut in the Apollo program is aware that they are not alone. Apollo 10 launched in May 1969, and their radio picked up a strange signal on the far side of the moon. They described it as whistling space music.
That music even sounds outer spacey, doesn't it? You hear that? That whistling sound? Richard. Yeah, it sounds like, outer space-time music.
Hearing it, you might think it's a transmission to Earth, but that's not possible. Apollo 10 was on the far side of the moon, where radio waves can't reach. Whatever these sounds were, they were definitely coming from somewhere on the far side of the moon. After the mission, NASA put the sound recordings in a vault.
NASA's vault, also known as the Shredder.
Well, that's true. The original high-quality recordings of the moon landings are gone. NASA said they either lost them or recorded only. They're not sure.
Or they never went up to the moon, and losing the tapes is a convenient way to cover it up.
Or that. While Michael Collins is hearing eerie sounds coming over the radio, Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin are having their own encounter on the moon's surface. But they aren't hearing things. They're seeing them. NASA may have lost the tapes, but we still have transcripts of radio communications. There are hours and hours of conversations between the astronauts, ground control, even the President of the United States. But here's something strange. 2 minutes of radio communications are missing. But we do have the transcripts of those minutes. And the transcripts explain why the audio is missing. The astronauts definitely saw something on the moon.
No, not enough to believe. No one's gonna believe this. Whistle. I say that there were other spaceships. They're lined up on the other side of the crater. There they are, and they're watching us.
Buzz Aldrin and Neil Armstrong planted an American flag on the surface of the moon. The entire world watched them do it. But they left something else, something that we didn't see. Within a few feet of the first boot print made on the moon lies a small white cloth pouch. Inside that bag is a gold olive branch, a symbol of peace. Also in the bag is a disc.
I hope they let the copy of Journey live in Houston.
They didn't,
Oh,
it's...
that's too bad. The escape tour was where I met my second wife.
Do you mind if
Though
I...
my first wife paid for the tickets.
The disc...
The little orange fish who grew up with a crazy wish. He took a midnight ball going anywhere. What? You didn't see that coming?
Unfortunately, I did. The disc was made of silicon and about the size of a $50 coin. Etched onto the disc are letters so small you can only read them under a microscope. The disc had messages of goodwill from NASA and 73 world leaders. Now, why bring messages of peace to an empty world? Because the Apollo 11 crew was warned that when they landed on the moon, they wouldn't be alone. Back in 1965, the crew of Gemini 4 experienced the first recorded UFO sighting in space. It's in the radio transcript from astronaut James McDivitt.
I just saw something else up here with me, but just as I was getting close enough to it to take a good picture, the sun got in the way and I lost it. It had big arms sticking out of it, it looked like. I only had it for just a minute.
After After that sighting, NASA astronauts created code words for UFOs, like bogey, Santa Claus, and fire. When Apollo 8 went into lunar orbit in 1968, the crew saw a Santa Claus. We have Jim Lovell's report to Houston. Is there something on the moon that NASA doesn't want us to know? The answer, of course, is yes. Do we know what they're hiding? Well, thanks to a few whistleblowers, that answer is also yes. It was 1965 when Airman Second Class Carl Wolf was summoned to NASA's Lunar Orbiter Project facility. He was in a hangar surrounded by scientists. But what struck him was these scientists weren't just from NASA or just from America. They were from all over the world.
And the first thing I thought to myself, if this is NASA, what are all these foreigners doing here? What are all these people from other countries speaking other language? Didn't make any sense to me.
And they looked concerned.
You know, what are all of these people doing here? And they were very quiet, very reserved, and there was a very peculiar pall hanging over them. They had a very concerned demeanor.
Carl was just a technician. He was there to fix a piece of equipment that processed images from the lunar satellites. So he went into the dark room where the imaging equipment was. Now, while waiting for clearance to move the equipment to a better workspace, another airman working there shows Carl something life-changing.
About 30 minutes into the process, he said to me, in a very distressed way, by the way, we've discovered a base on the backside of the moon. And then he proceeded to put photographs down in front of me, and clearly in these photographs were structures, mushroom-shaped buildings, spherical buildings, and towers.
So Carl finishes the job and goes home. He was excited to learn more about these moon bases on the evening news. That news report would never happen. Then Carl realized there was a cover-up, and he was part of it. So he blew the whistle and started doing interviews. During a national press conference in 2001, he said he was willing to go before Congress under oath.
And I will testify under oath before Congress that what I'm saying is the truth.
He never got to testify.
No, here we go. Please say he's alive and well and didn't die in a mysterious unsolved case with no suspects.
Well,
He died in a mysterious unsolved case with no suspects, didn't he?
while on a bike ride near his home, Carl Wolf was hit by a truck and killed.
Son of a bitch.
But Carl wasn't alone. Dr. Ken Johnston also knew NASA was lying. From 1969 to 1972, Johnston worked with NASA as an aerospace engineer at their University laboratory. If something came back from the moon, he helped catalog it, including photos taken by the Apollo astronauts. And what he saw was stunning. There were photos of alien cities and ancient machinery. There were ruins, domed buildings, stone towers, and objects that seemed to defy gravity. A supervisor asked him to destroy all the photos of the moon's surface. Johnston did, but he secretly held on to one set of pictures. After he came forward in 1995, Dr. Johnston was dismissed and never worked for NASA again. Donna Hare is another former NASA employee with secret clearance.
I was talking to one of the techs in there, and he drew my attention to a photograph, a NASA photograph. It had a dot on it, and I said, "What is that?" Well, he drew my attention to it, and I said, "Is that a dot on the emulsion?" And he's smiling, and he has his hands crossed, and he said, "Round dots on the emulsion don't leave round shadows on the ground."
She said that NASA scrubbed UFO and alien anomalies from their photos, sanitized for our safety.
And by its very nature, UFO, and I wanted to clarify that to a gentleman that was talking to me, means unidentified. So I did not know what this was. But I realized at this point that it's very secret, that it was kept secret, because I asked him, what are you going to do with this piece of information? And he said, we always airbrush these out before we sell them to the public.
Robert Dean was a U.S. Army major who worked for NATO. In 1964, he saw a report called The Assessment. This report covered an alleged 1961 UFO incident with dead aliens. Dean claimed that NASA destroyed 40 rolls of film from the Apollo missions. Some of the saved pictures are of cigar-shaped objects seen by Neil Armstrong. There's a picture of a disc the astronauts saw as they orbited the moon. There are also pictures of huge buildings in the Landsberg crater.
The astronauts in orbit above the moon were particularly fascinated by the Landsberg crater. There was construction going on. There were gigantic facilities in the crater up there, so they were specifically delegated and assigned to photograph Landsberg to see if they could figure out what the hell was going on down there. While they were looking at Landsberg, this object happened to express interest in them and flew by.
These were the pictures of objects that appeared outside the astronauts' windows. Time and again, mysteries of the far side of the moon were discovered and documented. Time and again, they were suppressed. Time and again, brave witnesses have come forward to expose this suppression. Time and again, many of those witnesses died before they could testify. NASA says we should trust them, but not whistleblowers. But how can we trust NASA when we know for a fact that they alter images? I did a whole episode on how NASA photoshopped pictures of Mars and the Earth, and some of their editing was pretty sloppy.
NASA Mars cover-up link down the alley, Sally.
In 1994, the Clementine orbiter took 2 million pictures of the moon's surface. When they were released to the public, people started noticing that many of them had sections that were blurred out. Here's an image of the Zeeman crater. Clearly, something is being censored. When other images of the crater were overlapped, compressed, and compared, it became obvious that something was there. This became known as the Zeeman object. Some people think this object is a giant spacecraft as large as a city. It's thought to be a ship because another picture of the Zeeman crater has been censored and shows a different object. When compared, overlapped, and enhanced, there appears to be another large ship. Now don't bother looking for the censored images on NASA's website. They're gone. Other anomalies have been spotted like giant footprints. Scientists have tried to explain them away as meteor impacts, but that's probably not what they are.
These structures that we see stretching over tens of kilometers across the lunar surface do not appear to be related to impact cratering processes.
Pyramids have been found on the moon's surface, obelisks and mile-high towers. As recently as 2021, China's moon rover took a picture of what's been called a mystery hut. NASA has explanations for all of these. They're tricks of the light, or pareidolia, where your mind sees an object in randomness, like a cloud shaped like an animal. Now, of course, we could know for sure if we would actually visit these structures, but there doesn't seem to be an appetite for that. Before the lunar missions, both the US and Russia planned to establish military bases on the moon. The original plan for the moon was not exploration, but weaponization. The US called its plan Project Horizon. And let me know if you want to see a full episode about this. It's pretty intense. So in the 1950s, getting to the moon was a major priority.
We choose to go to the moon. We choose to go to the moon. We choose to go to the moon in this decade and do the other things. Not because they are easy, but because they are hard. Because that goal will serve to organize and measure the best of our energies and skills. Because that challenge is one that we're willing to accept, one we are unwilling to postpone, and one we intend to win.
Ignition sequence start.
In the 1960s, both the United States and the Soviet Union scrambled to get a man on the moon.
0, all engine running.
It is for these reasons that I regard the decision last year to shift our efforts in space from low to high gear as among the most important decisions that will be made during my incumbency in the office of the presidency.
The U.S. got there first.
Tranquility Base here. The Eagle has landed.
The Soviet program was set back by a few failures, but they kept trying. Apollo 17 was the last manned mission to the moon. That was December 1972. Although more missions were planned, the United States canceled them. In 1972, the Soviet lunar program was no longer a priority. And in 1974, the Soviet Union officially canceled its program. Now, if I were a conspiracy theorist, I would think that both the US and the Russian government, despite being enemies, agreed to stay away from the moon. In 1972, the only way those two countries would agree on anything was if they were forced to.
What are you buying?
The USSR and the US
Oh.
were the only superpowers on Earth.
Okay, I guess
But
it's
there was
time for you to
another
go
bigger
home.
superpower.
Goodbye,
And this
Beamer.
one was on the moon.
Miss you. Torch broke.
Astronauts of the Apollo missions hearing and seeing things. Bases on the far side of the moon. Whistleblowers uncovering proof. This story is full of wild claims, but let's break it down. The transcript of Apollo 11 seeing spaceships on the moon is unofficial, meaning probably fake. Someone supposedly captured the recording with an amateur ham radio and transcribed it. The Apollo 10 sounds were real. All three astronauts heard something when they went to the far side of the moon. But NASA says it was just interference between two different radios. But astronaut Al Warden doesn't buy that theory.
The Apollo 10 crew is very used to the kind of noise that they should be hearing. Logic tells me that if there was something recorded on there, then there was something there.
Vodka, I don't know what the hell that was, babe.
The Apollo 10 astronauts never publicly discussed the sounds. Apollo 8 said they saw Santa Claus because they were in space on Christmas Eve. It was just a joke.
Morning, Apollo 8. Pete here. I'd just like to wish you all a very Merry Christmas on behalf of everyone in the control center, and I'm sure everyone around the world. None of us ever expect to have a better Christmas present than this one. Hope you get a good night's sleep from here on, and enjoy your Christmas dinner tomorrow, and look forward to seeing you in Hawaii on the 28th.
Okay, leader, we'll see you there. That was a very, very nice ride, that last one. This engine is as smooth as glass.
Yeah, we gathered that. An outstanding job all the way around.
Now, the gold olive branch that Apollo 11 left on the moon is also real, as is the silicon disc with messages of goodwill. Buzz Aldrin almost forgot to place it, and Neil Armstrong had to remind him.
Oh, if he forgot it, they could have done another take. Kubrick was famous for doing lots of takes in his movies.
This episode is not about the Stanley Kubrick conspiracy.
Stanley Kubrick moon landing video below.
Thanks for that.
Neil, Buzz, everybody back to one. Camera rolls, down speeding, and action with the flag thing.
Okay, we get it. As for the whistleblowers, well, as most whistleblowers do, they receive a lot of scrutiny. Critics say people like Ken Johnston and Donna Hare never worked as closely with NASA as they claim. Johnston only worked for companies contracted with NASA, and after he made his claims about stolen photos, he never worked at NASA again. Also, his story has changed a bit over the years. A lot of Johnston's moon photos have been debunked. Well, in my opinion, not fully debunked, but there are valid challenges to his photos. In the description, I linked to the book Dark Mission by Richard Hoagland and Mike Barra. Dark Mission shows a lot of these photos. It's worth checking out, and you can make up your own mind. There you go, Barra. You got a plug. You happy? I'm teasing. To be fully transparent, Mike contributes to this channel. He's one of the people who got me interested in the moon. But I'm being honest when I say I read Dark Mission when it first came out, and Richard Hoagland was one of my favorite guests that Art Bell would have on Coast to Coast. So the book is fun, and the link is below. Now, back to the whistleblowers. Donna Hare was also a contract worker. Her clearance was relatively low, and she made that clear. But the only proof we have of her story is what she says.
And I was just amazed that they had a protocol in place for getting rid of UFO pictures.
The same is true for Carl Wolf. He was very much who he said he was, but the only evidence we have of what Carl saw is what Carl said he saw.
Walked over to one side of the ground and said, by the way, we've discovered a base on the back side of the moon. And I said, whose?
The whistleblower stories are compelling. To me, Carl Wolf sounds sincere, but without hard evidence, there's no way to know for sure. Now, I'm glad whistleblowers come forward, but always be skeptical of them. Some of them are telling the truth, and some are just spreading disinformation for Air Force intelligence. Which ones are telling the truth? I have no idea, and I think NASA and the U.S. military like it that way. If there's any hard evidence about bases or ancient ruins on the moon, NASA has it, and if they do, it's classified, and we're not going to see it. But hard evidence or not, the moon's weird. No matter how wide a crater is, the depths are pretty uniform. It rings like a bell for hours when struck. It's too large and too close to the Earth. No other planet in our solar system or any other solar system has a moon like ours. The moon shouldn't even be there.
Hello, Moon Theory Link on the deal.
And the far side is even stranger. It's completely different from the side that faces us. We first learned this in 1959. That's when the Soviet space probe Luna 3 took the first pictures of the moon's far side. It's clear. Its craters are several miles wide and completely cover the entire surface. The crust is 30 miles thicker than the crust on the side that we see. Scientists theorized the moon formed from two separate moons that slowly collided into one. But it's odd that one side of the separation perfectly faces us, and the other side is perfectly hidden. That's a strangely accurate space collision.
Oh, so this theory says the moon is like a McDLT.
How's that?
One side cold, one side hot, but forms a perfect burger.
No, it's just the theory.
The McDLT is not a theory, it's a delicious fact.
I'm talking quarter pound of beef on the hot side. The new big DLT.
Those were pretty good burgers. I don't know why they didn't bring those back. Well, it took 50 years, but there's finally renewed interest in the moon. Just last week, China's Chang'e 6 mission collected the first samples ever retrieved from the far side of the moon. China plans to send astronauts to the lunar South Pole in 2026 as part of its Artemis 3 mission. India, Russia, and Japan have lunar missions planned. Same with the European Space Agency, South Korea, the UAE. Looks like we're in a space race once again. And private companies have also joined the race. SpaceX, Blue Origin, Firefly, and at least 5 other American companies have moon missions planned. At least 10 other non-American companies are also going. This is exciting, but I still have this nagging thought. There are a few former astronauts, a few whistleblowers, and even a few remote viewers who claim they saw aliens on the moon. And they say those aliens are not friendly. But we're going. Within the next 10 to 20 years, the moon is going to be a very crowded place. Whatever's up there, we're going to know about it. And if it turns out that aliens are on the moon, then one of two things happens. One, it's the greatest discovery of the human race. Or two, it's the Thank you so much for hanging out with us today. My name is AJ, Cyclefish.
Ciao, nice to meet the bull.
This has been the Y-Files. Jet Butter learned anything, do him a favor, subscribe, comment, share, like. That stuff really makes him happy. Like most topics we cover on the channel, today's was recommended by you. So if there's something you want to see or learn more about, go to theyfiles.com/tips. And remember, the Y-Files is also a podcast. Twice a week, I post deep dives into the stories we cover here on the channel, I also post episodes that wouldn't be allowed on the channel. Those are called unredacted. Anyway, the podcast is called, wait for it, the Y-Files Operation Podcast. It's available everywhere you get your podcasts. Now, in between episodes, if you need more Y-Files in your life, and not everyone should have more, but some people need it, check out our Discord server. We're over 50,000 members over there.
For now, we're going to delve into a whole different world, and one that I want to warn some of you is going to frighten you. And there are people who become upset by discussions involving the paranormal and ghosts. And if you are one of those people, I urge you right now to turn your radio off. Go watch TV or something. Listen to somebody else's radio program. Because this morning we're going off into a complete different world. And I've got a couple of setup pieces this morning that I think you'll enjoy. This story from the Associated Press, it's Dayline Capitol Hill. With its 200-year history, it's not surprising that the United States Capitol building is the scene of many a ghost story. Clarence Brown, president of the U.S. Capitol Historical Society and a former congressman himself, says over the past 2 centuries, both the bold and the faint-hearted claim to have seen or heard spirits at the Capitol. There's the story of the demon Black Cat, reported over the years by more than one guard. There's the sighting of former president-turned-congressman John Quincy Adams, who died near the floor of the old House chamber in 1848. And there are those who smelled baking bread from the Capitol basement long after Union forces ceased using a secret tunnel as a Civil War bakery. Then there's this touch of Nevada story for you that I found particularly fascinating. It comes from a newspaper that you probably don't read, that we get in a little town where I live called Pahrump, Nevada. It's a little newspaper called the Gateway Gazette. It's the Thursday, October 28th edition. And the story is by Dave Downing, who is a Gazette staff writer, and it's entitled The Ghosts of the Mizpah Hotel. About 2 months ago, I bellied up to the bar at one of my favorite watering holes, the Mizpah Hotel Casino in Tonopah. My son had come up from Las Vegas to visit, and we were having a late-night drink. It was about 1 in the morning. You see, about 1 in the morning. These are the times, ladies and gentlemen, where these things occur. A fellow, I would guess to be in his 40s, came up from behind us, sat at the bar next to me. I glanced at him, seeing a dozen or two tattoos on his arm, decided to avoid a conversation. I heard him order a beer. When the beer arrived, he upended the bottle, guzzled down a slug. The bottle hit the bar with a whack, and he looked at me and said, "Boy, that's a hell of a hologram they've got in the elevator." Huh? The elevator, he said. I've never been there before. They've got an incredible hologram in there. I don't understand. He said, "Oh, I thought you were a local." The Mizpah has a hologram of a beautiful woman dressed in old-fashioned clothing. It's in the elevator, man. It does look real. I told him that I'm a local. I also told him there's no hologram in the elevator. He looked at me strangely, drank his beer, and left. A few minutes later, he returned to the bar. He looked upset. "You're right," he exclaimed. "There is nothing in the elevator." He walked back toward the elevator, and I never saw him again. Had the lady in red appeared again? There are many strange tales from the hallowed ween halls of the Mizpah. The most popular tale involves the murder of a pretty young lady on the 5th floor of the hotel. She was a lady of the evening and became involved in a love triangle. That's according to the assistant manager now of the Mizpah, Sue Harmon. She was caught with another man by the man who was madly in love with her. He stabbed her to death. According to Harmon, there have been many sightings of the lady in red. She resides on the 5th floor, but she'll wander all over the hotel. She loves to pull pranks. She's the one that causes the Keno board to light up. Wait till you hear this. Many employees and visitors to the Mizpah, when they've seen the Keno board, begin to flash numbers as if a game were in progress. The Keno boards at the Mizpah haven't been connected to an electrical source for years. Many claim she can be heard at night, moaning and walking about the floors. She's been known to carry on a conversation with people. We'll only later find out no one is there. Sharon Mitchell of Round Mountain relates a story about the lady in red that occurred to her son Stuart when he was working at the hotel during its reconstruction in the late 70s. Sharon was a dealer and a pit boss for the Mizpah at the time. 2 of my sons worked after school at the Mizpah, helping to remove walls and do general construction work. Stuart was 14 or 15 years old at the time. One night, Stuart was unusually quiet on the way home. I asked him if he was feeling okay, but he said something weird had happened during work. Stuart told his mother, "I was working down in the basement tearing out a wall. There was a woman with me. She asked me what I was doing, and I told her I was taking the wall down. She told me she didn't want the wall taken out. I asked her who she was, and she said, 'I live here, and I don't want that wall taken down.'" Stuart went to get his boss. When they returned, the lady was, of course, no longer there. Sharon told her son that it didn't seem much to be upset about. Stuart responded, "But, Mom, it isn't Halloween, but she was dressed in a costume." According to Sharon, her son then described the lady as wearing a long dress with a bustle that looked like turn-of-the-century clothing. He was very upset. Mitchell said she really didn't believe in ghosts, but if they exist anywhere, they're at the Mizpah. Pat Dennis, a former Mizpah waitress, is one who has personally seen the Keno board begin to light up. I don't know for a fact that the Keno board isn't connected to an electrical source, so I can't really say that the lady in red is involved. Who knows? Maybe they left a wire or two connected to some source by accident. Dennis says she's heard that the lady in red will steal guests' shoes, but only if the shoes are red. George Tooley, a former slot mechanic for the Mizpah, has seen that board light up, the Keno board. It would start playing a game. Usually it would happen during the graveyard shift. All of a sudden, the numbers would start lighting up as if a game were being played. You get about 20 numbers. They'd stay up for a while, then all go out. It happened 3 times one night. He added that the controls for the Keno board, get this, were removed in 1979 when the hotel underwent reconstruction. There are no controls for the board, he said. Waitress Linda Evans has had direct experiences with the lady in red. She's always been kind to me, but she doesn't like men, she said. Evans tells a tale of horror involving her son and grandson. Her son was 26, the grandson 13 at the time. I was in the employees section resting. I'd had only 2 hours sleep and I was exhausted. My son and grandson arrived and I opened the door for them. They just stood there staring beyond me. They looked as if they were in a trance. I asked them if they were coming in. They just stood and stared. I finally turned around and looked behind me, but I didn't see anything. I turned back to them and my grandson said, "That's the first time I ever saw a person without a head." The boy told her they saw a woman dressed in red walk across the room and through a wall. She was holding her head in her hands. They both said they saw the same thing. He also tells a story of a band that had been contracted by the Mizpah. They heard stories about the lady in red decided to hold a party in their room. During the party, they began asking for her, a sort of seance. The lady not only appeared to them, but bothered them for the rest of the week. She wouldn't leave them alone. There are other stories about different ghosts in the Mizpah. Gene Heidman, Mizpah desk clerk, tells about a woman from Las Vegas that had a room on the 5th floor. She woke up and saw a man at the foot of her bed. She began screaming, made quite a bit of racket. Next morning, while she was checking out, she apologized for making such a scene. She explained to me that it was the worst and most realistic nightmare she'd ever had. She went to the Pittman room, that's the Pittman room, for breakfast. She was drinking coffee, glanced at the pictures on the wall. Suddenly, she dropped her coffee cup and began screaming again, "That's him! That's the man!" She was looking at a picture of Senator Key Pittman. According to Jean Bridges, a former waitress, the Mizpah used to have a security guard named Otis. Otis was a huge man that others would be afraid of, big macho type. Bridges and others told how Otis was scared to death of the 5th floor. He would refuse to go up there without someone with him. At some time in his Mizpah career, he had gone to the 5th floor room because of a loud party. And that's where he saw her. And I'm going to stop there. There's more. But that's a little tale of what's going on here in Nevada. And at one of the brothels in Pahrump, Nevada, the locals and everybody there is known for a very long time, there is a ghost. Now, I guess Nevada is a likely candidate for this sort of thing. I don't know why. Our history, some of it in the past, violent. And that brings me to why so many ghosts appear, or so many spirits appear to remain here on this world. I think they can't go anywhere else. Frequently, when a death is unexpected, early, violent, when there's something utterly unsatisfied here on earth, unrequited love frequently will bring a spirit that seems to stay. Other reasons, I don't know it all. I just know that I've heard the stories, and this morning you're going to hear it. That's what we're going to do. We're going to talk about ghosts, poltergeists, spirits. And one of the reasons that I've found this topic through my life so fascinating, and I always return to it, is because for a very long time I've been on a search, a hard search, for some sort of proof of life after death. Now, obviously, if spirits are remaining on Earth or here at all, that means there is some sort of life after death. This may be an aberration. It may be, but nevertheless, it certainly is, you must admit, an indication that there is something that comes after. So, if you have a ghost story for us this morning, a real ghost story, if you're seeing a ghost or being bothered by one now, we want to hear from you. And that's a little taste to get you started. I now await your story, and we'll be right back. All right, if you're ready, I think I am, and if it starts to get scary enough, I will extinguish my lights and sort of get in the spirit of things. I've done that every year. I'm not allowed to bring a candle in here.
No fire.
But I do extinguish the lights and kind of get myself into the mood. Here we go. Wildcard line 3, good morning. You are on the air.
Thank you, sir. This story revolves around a historical building in the town of Provincetown, Massachusetts, which is a town that's out on the very tip of Cape Cod. A number of years ago, this is going back 20 years ago, my uncle was a former California contractor.
Maybe with that paddle you won't.
Took a job as a caretaker in a building called the Provincetown Inn.
Oh, yes.
And he was there basically living rent-free to do some restoration, renovation on this old building. And this is a guy who watched, the hockey games, didn't care about ghost stories, didn't believe in that sort of thing. But as he and his wife lived for a while, they began to see more and more evidence of what I guess you would call poltergeist activity. This was in the...
things flying around?
Yes, absolutely. They would be watching a hockey game, and his wife would be cooking some spaghetti sauce in the kitchen, and they'd be watching together. She'd come out, and she'd leave the wooden spoon in the pot, and they'd hear this clatter in the kitchen, and they'd both run out there, and the spoon would be across the room, and spaghetti sauce would be all over the place. And then they began hearing footsteps in the upper story of the inn at all hours of the day and night, and would rush upstairs to see who was there, because this was generally in the off-season when they didn't have any people renting rooms and so forth, and there was never anyone there. And on one occasion, they had some footsteps who were wandering around, and he got his gun off the rack above the hearth, and the stairs were coming down of the wall just on the other side of the living room, and there was a door in the entryway that was at the bottom of the stairs, and this separated the stairwell from where they were watching television. And as the footsteps came down the stair, he said to his wife, "As soon as the footsteps get to the bottom, open the door and I'll be ready with the gun." And he opened the door and there was no one there. And so we began hearing stories about this. My family and I lived near Springfield, Massachusetts at the time, and so my brother and I, who were big fans of a television program with Gary Collins, it was called Sense or something. That was about the time that this was going on, and we were all hyped up on this paranormal activity. And so we decided we were going to go there with our cameras and try and get pictures of ghosts and this kind of stuff. And we had some really frightening experiences. We began watching my uncle and his wife as they were using a Ouija board, which has the letters of the alphabet and a number of numbers. And
I know about Ouija.
Yes and no and this kind of thing. And it turned out that leading up to this particular weekend, my brother and I were there. They had actually done some historical research in the archives in Boston and other places to try and find out about the history of the building. And they found, among other things, that in the 1870s, Provincetown had been a big whaling village. There was a lot of whaling going on up and down the eastern seaboard. And on one occasion, one of these whaling vessels would run aground on the sandbars off of Provincetown in the major storm, and a number of people had been killed. Well, the lumber that was salvaged from the wreck of the ship was used to build the Provincetown Inn.
Oh, no kidding.
It's annexed.
You see, every time, every one of these stories seems to come back to the same thing. Some sort of violent, unexpected death, or some death that leaves somebody wanting in a terrible moment of love or hate or any giant strong emotion.
Absolutely. In fact, the story goes on. I mean, it gets actually quite a bit more frightening.
All right, well, listen, we're kind of out of time on this one, but I really do appreciate that. It's right down my alley.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you, my friend. Good morning. East Coast Ghosts. Another place where there are a lot of stories of ghosts and spirits, of course, is New England. Now, we should once again suggest that the older areas, the first settled areas up in New England, would be likely settings for such things. And of course, Europe, where society is quite a bit older than ours, and a lot of buildings are quite a bit older than ours, with a lot of history behind them, seem to be troubled by this sort of thing frequently as well. Again, the reason I find all of this so utterly fascinating is that obviously any proof of ghosts, any confirmation of spirits is, in effect, confirmation of life after death. And I know that many of us, not just me, are totally fascinated by that possibility.
From the Kingdom of Nye, this is a special replay of Coast to Coast AM with Art Bell. Tonight's program is a rebroadcast from October 30th, 1993. Join Art live Monday night with his annual Ghost to Ghost AM show.
I'm Art Bell. Back to the phones. And good morning, first-time caller line. You're on the air. Where are you calling from?
Morning, from Alameda, California, right outside of San Francisco.
Oh, excellent. Welcome to the program.
SRO. Last year, my 5 children and I, we live in a big, old, rambling house, and I started hearing things. The house is so big that you might hear from the next room. It was 5 kids. Anybody could be anywhere in the house.
Absolutely.
And I'd go, and the door slammed too hard, so I'd go to reprimand, don't be slamming the door, and there was no one there. So, of course, your mind tells you, I thought I heard something, oh, well. And so then you'd hear footsteps, and you think someone's coming downstairs, and you go, and, oh, I thought I heard something, oh, well.
Yeah, well, the human mind, of course, reaches out to find rational explanations for things that may not have any rational explanation.
Absolutely, and denial, too.
Sure.
It's called denial. Well, unbeknownst to me, the children were experiencing noises and footsteps, and I didn't want to tell them because I wasn't sure what it was, and I dismissed it from my mind. And then when I started saying, no, this is something, I didn't want to scare them. And apparently they were experiencing all this as well. People going into the shower, someone entering the shower when they were in the shower.
That would bother me.
Oh, that's very unnerving.
Suddenly be in the shower soaping up and feel the brush of another body next to you.
Real
No.
sensation of something or somebody. You quickly leave the curtain and no one's there. You quickly lather off and hurt it. You say, but I know I did. But here again, oh well, I guess it's my mind. Well, everyone was experiencing these things, but no one told anybody. I didn't for the specific purpose. I didn't want to scare the children. They didn't tell me, thinking, as a child, that if they told me it would come true.
Right.
The one day that we found out that everybody knew was when I was reprimanding my son, and he was very distracted and agitated, and I thought he was being disrespectful. So as I started to correct him even more, he finally said, no, Mom, actually I saw something. And that's when the flood of everybody, yes, I saw it too, and I heard this, and I saw that, and I mean, you would hear someone jumping on the bed, and I'd go to look, and nobody was there. Another night I was home alone, and I was very agitated, and I couldn't read, I couldn't sit down, I couldn't watch TV. And so finally I sat down and looked at a picture book, one of the children's picture books, and I had this overwhelming feeling that was looking at me. I came home and my son put his feet in there, and the angle that it was, whatever it was staring at me. That's why I was so agitated. So these things just started accelerating. When the thing found out that we knew, it started manifesting itself in the form of a shadow. And I'm talking about at 12 noontime. The children saw it first, and they became just crumpled. They were crumpled, absolutely. I mean, they were yelling and screaming. And
I'd be crumpled, too.
And, I mean, I was just, I didn't know what to think. So I called my priest. I went up, and we right away got in the van and went up there and told him, and he didn't believe us. He said there were mice or, you know, people, hysteria, and all the common explanations that you get. I was so upset that on the way home I ran a stop sign. I knew that we saw and we heard what we saw and we heard. Finally, till that night, I saw the shadow, and I bolted up. We were all sleeping now together. We all had to touch each other. Everybody, 6 people in a room, everybody's feet or something had to be touching. We were so scared.
I do understand, yes.
I didn't want to tell anybody with the reaction of the priest that it wasn't true. I thought we'd be labeled as either liars or...
Did the priest come there?
No, he didn't even want to deal with it. He didn't want to hear about it. I guess I figured out later, like, what could he do? I don't know. I still don't understand why he did not help us.
Well, we're about out of time. How did it become resolved?
Another priest, we found another priest come and bless the house. The thing got very agitated. It started throwing things and making noises, and when the priest left, it was still here. My children just became hysterical. I got a crucifix, and very corny, I guess, but I went through the house, sending it back to where it came, and it left. But I was still about 2 weeks later now. We're still sleeping together. No one can move. We're paralyzed. No one's eating. No one's going to school. No one's anything. And I'm just saying in my mind, what could it have been? And a voice said, your brother. Sure enough, I called around the last known address he was at. No one had seen him in about 15 years. Somehow I was able to track him down in San Francisco. He had died 2 months before.
Oh, my God. Thank you.
Incredible.
Thank you very much for the call. Oh, that sends shivers down my spine. That's the kind of thing that does it, and that's the kind of thing that is so frequent. When you hear these stories, it comes again and again. Somebody who's passed away. Somebody who's passed away without leaving a message or finishing something that was so important in their life that it couldn't be ignored even in death. Well, let's break for a moment. Good evening. You're on the air.
Oh, yes, Art, I had a brush with something eerie in 1956 in Pittsburgh, PA. As a young person, my husband and I had moved into the third-floor rooms of a very old house, probably built around the turn of the century. And we rented the third-floor room to an old couple in their 80s where our landlord's on the first floor. The second floor was empty. And so among our 4 rooms, there was one particular small room that for some reason I had a very strange, eerie feeling about it. It just never felt right. We just used it for storage and always kept that door closed. So this one particular night, my husband traveled on business and he was away. I came home from work about 6 o'clock. The old couple were in their rooms downstairs, but with their doors closed, so I felt very much alone in the house. And I was up there. Our bathroom happened to be on the second floor, which was empty. So I was up there for a couple of hours, and I kept having this terrible feeling that something or someone was in that little room. And I kept thinking, well, I must be being silly. So after a couple of hours, I went down to use the bathroom on the second floor. And while I'm in there, something seemed to be telling me, do not go back upstairs. And I had to really drag myself up there because I had this horrible feeling. And
You mean you went anyway?
I went anyway.
Well, why do people always do, even in the movies, the scantily dressed women always go to the basement? Why?
Well, I wasn't scantily dressed.
Well, that's fine.
So anyway, I decided I'm being foolish, so I go up these stairs, and I'm climbing up this very long flight of steps, and I get almost to the top, about the third step down, when I hear the latch of that door open up. It made a click, a loud click, and that door opened. It made the biggest squeak you ever heard in your life, just like in the movies. And I raced down those steps back to the bathroom, 3 at a time, literally. Went back in that room, closed the door, locked that bathroom door, and I sat in there for about 2 hours till my husband came home. When I heard that front door downstairs opening, I was so relieved. He came in, and I told him what had happened, so we went back upstairs. And that door was open about a foot or so. And we looked inside, of course. We saw no one, nothing. And I can't explain why that happened to open that night that way. But in any case, I always, gave me heart failure. But a postscript to all this is that within a year after we had moved out of that house, the old man downstairs in his 80s had died. And a young couple apparently had moved into the second floor, and we read in the paper that their baby had died in its crib.
Oh.
And they were on the second floor. And I just had the strangest feeling that there was a very evil spirit in that house that was looking for a victim or something, and I almost feel that if I had gone up those stairs that night when I heard that door open, that I could have been that victim.
Oh, well,
That was, honest to God, a really spooky house.
I understand, and I heartily appreciate your story.
Okay.
It was a good one. Thank you. That was a good one. Why is it, do you think, that people always compulsively almost do what they've been instructed not to do? Why, I joked about, in the horror stories where they always go directly to the basement. It killed. No, I screamed, no, not the basement. They open the door and down they go, where they're eaten alive by something, inevitably. But even in real life, listen to that lady. Listen to the story we just got. Something told her not to do that, and what's the first thing she did? She forced herself to do it. Maybe the answer is that we want to return to a rational thought pattern. If something disturbs us, we want to deny it. We want a rational explanation for it. So instead of caving into the natural fear of the moment over what just happened, you proceed to try to get a rational, oh, it was the cat, or something like that. You search automatically, or you feel a compulsion to go and search for a rational explanation. That might make sense. Top of the morning on our first-time caller line. You're on the air.
Hi, is this Art?
Yes, it is. Welcome to the program. Where are you, please?
I am in Seattle.
Seattle, Washington, all right?
It's the most livable city in the nation, and I don't care what the people in Cincinnati say. Hey, we're talking about spooky, eerie, weird kind of stuff happening.
That's true.
Well, I have a story for you that'll probably won't send goosebumps up your spine. It'll probably make you go, oh, isn't that sweet, if that's possible. I had an aunt that I was very, very close to, actually a great aunt, very close to her. She was kind of, I just always kind of looked up to her in life. She was kind of my...
Sure, mentor.
My mentor, thanks. And I had gone out to the cemetery, as I do once a month, to put flowers on her grave and kind of trim the grass and all that.
Right.
And as I was driving around the curve, you have to go down a hill and around a curve to get out of the cemetery, she ran out in front of my car, and I thought, no, I'm seeing things, but when somebody something runs out in front of your car, what do? You slam
on the brakes.
I got rear-ended by 2 other cars, one of them being the security guard at the cemetery. I jumped out of the car thinking, oh my God, I'm going to pay for this one through the nose. Went back to make sure the people in the other 2 cars were okay, and both of them said, well, that woman shouldn't have run out in front of you like that. And I said, well, you saw her too? And they said, of course we saw her. And I said, well, I don't really remember what she looked like. I knew what she looked like, but, I wanted to check things out.
Now, when you went around to check the front of your car, There was, I take it, no woman.
There was no dent. I mean, I didn't hit her. She just kind of ran out in front of the car, across the street, and up this hill towards where there's kind of some woods. And everybody, there was a family in the car behind me and the security guard, all saw exactly the same person. A year after that, I went to the cemetery, drove down the hill, went around the corner, and the same exact thing happened again. And I was rear-ended.
You're wrong.
Another car.
You're wrong, sir. This is a goosebump story.
They saw the same person. And I guess the point that I'm getting at is I see my aunt all the time. I see her when I'm in town. I don't know if it's somebody that looks like her. But I just feel that she has a lot to do with the things that have been happening in my life. I feel like she's always guiding me.
Do you tend to see her at critical junctures in your life?
You know, that's funny you used to say that. A month ago, I was in the hospital facing major surgery, and the doctor one night, and she came in and sat on the bed, took my hand, and said, "The doctors are wrong. They've misdiagnosed you. You need to tell them that." The next morning, I asked the doctor to rerun tests because I felt something wasn't right, and sure enough, the tests had come out wrong, and I didn't need surgery. So,
man. All right, so we gotta run. We're out of time, but believe me, that's a prime.
You're a lot. She's there, and she's taking care of me, so I have a good guardian angel.
Thank you for the call. My gosh, what a story. Didn't mean to cut you off, but we're out of time, and I think we got the substance of your story. And believe me, sir, you're wrong. That's a big goosebump story. Big goosebump story. That's incredible. Of course, it might be some evidence that there are spirits of all temperaments. In other words, spirits not only that are evil, spirits that are helpful or loving may be there as well. Spirits of all kinds, kind of like a cross-section of the people that we've got on the planet right now, eh? Good morning, line 2, you're on the air.
Yes, good morning.
Good morning.
I wanted to tell you something that just keyed my mind after listening to everyone else.
Well, these have already been some pretty good stories, haven't they?
Yes, they have. In 1955, we had moved from Ely, Nevada, which is a very famous mining town, etc., a very old town. And we had moved over to Provo, Utah in 1953. And in 1955, on December 18th, I woke up in a terrible dream that someone in the family had died. And I didn't know who it was. And I immediately went on to my cousin, who was still residing in the same town in Ely. And so I called her that night, and I asked her how everything was going and everything. And they, there were 3 kids in the family then, or 4 kids in the family then, and her mother was pregnant with number 5. And she said, "Well, everything's fine, And I said, "Well, I was going to call and wish a Merry Christmas." And on December 21st, I woke up, and it was some ridiculous hour, like 12:30 or something, and I'm in school, and I'm a young person. And I said, "Somebody's gone." And I laid awake and waited for the phone to ring. And it rang, and it was my cousin's uncle had died in a car accident. And I thought, oh, wow, this is pretty weird, And then I had been experiencing other things throughout my life. And during 1970, I was visited in my mirror by my father, my biological father, who I did not know was deceased.
That would scare me to death. That might scare me to death. To look in a mirror, I hear stories like these, ma'am, and that would really frighten me. How solid did the vision seem to be?
Well, the first thing is it was a new home. Well, it was new to me and my husband, and of course my first child was born while we were there, and I was pregnant with my second child. And we had just bought this new bedroom set and set it up and everything, and my husband was away a lot. He was active in mining and stuff. And all of a sudden, just out of a clear blue sky, I woke up, and I saw this strange light. It was like a light in the mirror.
And it got brighter and brighter and brighter, and I got scared. I really did.
I understand.
And all of a sudden, it just like it came out of the mirror, and there was my biological father. I had not seen him since I was
Wait a minute.
old.
Wait a minute. It came out of the mirror?
Out of the mirror.
In a solid form?
In a solid form. And it was my biological father, and I had never seen him since I was 3 years old.
And you had a conversation with this man?
Yes, I did. Yes, I did. And what he said not to be afraid. And he said, kiss the children for me. And it brought tears to my eyes. I was so frightened, and yet I was at peace. It was just amazing.
Believe me, I understand that cross of emotions. I have got to go. Thank you so much for the story. You're back on the air, sir.
Hi, thank you, Warren. As I was saying, this house out in Marinwood, after all this activity started taking place in the house, I haven't had any sightings. You don't have to see something to be haunted. I've told the guys the activity, they don't see things. But electrical sockets burning out, doors getting slammed. Her father came out to the house. He is in construction, a contractor. Did some work on the sockets, and toasters would plug in, and then they'd burn out. One day, a woman friend of hers came over to pay her a visit. Comes into the house, has a small 3 or 4-year-old child. The child says he sees a lady in the hallway. A little while later, he's playing in the hallway, door slams shut. The woman, the mother of the child, and the woman who owns the house, it takes them 20 minutes to get the door unstuck, at which point the mother becomes hysterical. The little kid is scared because the lady he had felt or thought he had seen the lady there. They finally did get the door unstuck. There was no reason for the door being stuck. Mother and child left the house, haven't been back since. Theory. You were talking about how a lot of these people get separated from their bodies. The Indians and a lot of people believe that people who are addicted to drugs or drink alcohol get separated from their spirit.
I've heard that.
Now, if somebody gets separated from their spirit because of drug abuse, or they weren't ready to leave because they've died a violent death, then I think if there's that separation of body and spirit like that, or the Indians say drugs and alcohol will punch holes in your spirit. If you beat your spirit up or yourself up, you may wind up being grounded here.
Well, that would seem to happen, wouldn't it? Story after story after story.
And like I say, they looked into it, and they had found out that, yes, a woman had died there years earlier, and then later on they looked into it and discovered that, the cause of death was a heroin overdose. And this is one very angry spirit. Some people get in that house, and they're fine. Some people go in there, and they aren't fine.
Well, if it does punch holes in the spirit, that's a big hole.
Now, they tried to get my girlfriend to babysit out there, house sit, rather, and when she found out about the house, she didn't want to go. And so there's some sensible information for your listeners, too.
I appreciate it. I appreciate it, sir, and I appreciate the call. Thank you.
Okay, bye.
Right, bye. You ask yourself that question. Would you go into a haunted house if you knew it was haunted, if the story says that it was haunted, there were spirits lingering there? Top of the morning, you're on the air, Coast to Coast AM with Art Bell. Where are you calling from?
Hi, Art. Salt Lake City.
Salt Lake City, yes.
Listen, sir, I'd like to interject a note of caution from the cultural mecca of all that is the United States.
Right.
First of all, if also before I can, with the death of Vincent Price, I want to say you made it into my top 4 American heroes, sir.
Oh, well, thank you.
All right. Anyway, listen, I had an experience with a Ouija board, and just to note that biblically, I don't know how you feel about Christianity, but the scriptures do tell us that ghosts, the spirits of the dead do not come back to haunt the living. In fact, they're demons taking manifestations in order to fool the relatives of those that have already passed on. So
how then, if that's the case, do you account for some of the stories like we've heard this morning, the lady with the car and no brakes, spirits that seem to be those of departed loved ones that are here to help?
Well, a lot of times, you don't have the full stories. A lot of these spirits may be, intending to appear as benevolent, when in fact the intentions may be very malign. That's not what I wanted to talk about. I want to give you my own experience very quickly.
Sure.
What I was doing is I was playing with a Ouija board alone, long time ago.
Bad idea.
Bad idea. And I began having an argument with the planchette. Well, I thought, this is nonsense. This is my own energy. There's nothing in this. And at one point, every time that I would push the planchette to the S, the phone would ring. And so I asked the board if it were in fact ringing the phone, and it moved to the yes position. Well, I ran across the room to answer the phone kept ringing, and there was it was a crackling line. It sounded that the voice was distant, miles away, ancient voice, and it said, "You shall," and I didn't have the guts to listen to it. I hung the phone up. And for the next 7 years, this phenomena have been happening in my life. For example, I'll pass by cars.
Haven't you forevermore, if I can stop you, wondered, you shall what?
I don't know.
How could you hang up?
I really did not want to know. I didn't want to hear what it was going to say.
Okay.
But it is a warning. Don't, I've had an aversion to the paraphernalia of the occult ever since. And I think, there is...
I have a lot of respect for Ouija boards. I've had an experience with one myself, and I won't even talk about it.
Well, as I said, it may answer your question of whether or not you would spin around and see what it was there that was manifesting itself, or go into a haunted house. I've done it since the experience, but in every case I've rooted.
I appreciate your call, sir.
Certainly. Have a good morning.
All right, that's Salt Lake City with a caution, and a well-given caution it was, too, I might add. Well-given caution. You be careful. There are lots of things out there that we don't understand. And I think the possibility exists that a Ouija board is just inviting trouble. Line 3, you're on the air.
Hi, Art. How you doing?
Fine, sir. Welcome to the
Real
program.
good show tonight. Say, I have a question. That caller that called last hour about the glowing gravestone?
Yes.
There's a phenomenon called St. Elmo's fire.
Yes. But St. Elmo's fire tends not to return predictably to the same place again and again.
Yeah. During a...
Not saying it wasn't. I'm just saying that on many occasions the caller said he saw this glowing gravestone, that it would be St. Elmo's fire that many times is not probable.
That's true. But that'd be something you really would want to see once, and I think that'd be about it.
That'd do me.
Yeah. Well, take it easy.
All right. Thank you. Just wanted to suggest that possibility, I guess. Hi, on the first-time caller line, you're on the air.
Yeah, hi.
Where are you, sir?
I'm in Alaska.
Alaska, all right.
I was in the United States Marine Corps, and I was a sniper. And I went to Grenada, and I got hit in the knee with a bullet. And from pictures in the family, it was my great-great-grandfather in a Civil War uniform that sat down and froze my leg. And the Grenada is a jungle. And he said, "Everything will be okay, boy. Everything will be okay." And this first time I've talked about it, other than to the military psychologist. And
all right, if you don't mind, I want to be sure I understand. You were part of the invasion force. You were a sniper. You were in Grenada.
Yeah, my job was to make sure none of the Cubans got into the students at the university.
And so you were stationed there, and you were just going to take them out if you had to.
Yes. And an anti-sniper got me. My A-gunner ended up getting him.
Hit you in the leg?
Yeah, in the knee.
Oh, God.
Well, it went from the knee. It ended my military career. Went from the knee up around the pelvis bone and out the other ankle. The bullet traveled all.
What a horrible injury.
Yeah, it hurt. Very much so.
And so you were laying there?
Yeah, I instantly fell. There was nothing I could do. And like I say, through pictures of the family photo album, it was I think it'd be he was in the Civil War, and his 3 great-grandfathers sat down and froze my leg. My leg was frozen, not cauterized, it was frozen. The whole wound, which is something nobody's been able to explain. And he said, "Everything will be okay now, boy. Everything will be okay."
And left?
Yeah.
That's eerie. What did the medics say?
Medics, they were just asking me what we'd done, how we'd done this, where did we get ice. Nobody could understand. The psychologist told me that it was in the lust of battle and that I'd lost a lot of blood and that I wasn't sure what But my spotter, who is also a sniper, he felt something cold as he was taking the other man out, and he has shot before. It wasn't, it's not the coldness you feel when you take a man out.
I understand.
It was completely different, and, I was scared, but at the same time, there was this great feeling of security and just the joy of knowing that I had a family member there, because I really thought that the pain that I was feeling, I knew where the bullet went out. I didn't know what the damages were.
That's the most incredible story I've ever heard, and I really appreciate your call, sir. Thank you. Wow. For that one, I'll take a quick break. We'll be right back. Good morning, you're on the air. Coast swoop in. You were a dial tone. Spirit of a dial tone. Wildcard line 3, you're on the air.
Hello, Art.
Hello.
Yes, this is Mark from Anderson, California.
Hi, Mark.
Yeah, I had a situation happened a couple years ago. I was sitting at a friend's house, and it was about 1 o'clock in the morning. And we were sitting there talking about, people that we've known throughout our lives. And I was sitting in a chair, and all of a sudden, I bent over in extreme pain. I mean, it took me to the floor, out of the chair onto the floor on the right side. And then I kind of got a headache, and we were just, for some reason, my friend Craig and I both noted the time.
Right.
The thing that was strange was the next day, my friend was looking through the paper and noticed that a friend of mine had been killed. I used to work at a convenience store, and she used to come in, and her parents didn't really listen to her, and I was kind of like her mentor. I was her sounding board, whenever she had problems. Mm-hmm. And he told me that this young lady named Kelly had died. And I knew the area where she'd been hit by a car. I knew that much. And I went out into the area, and I was just kind of walking around. By feel, I found the area where she was hit, just through whatever I have in myself that told me this is it.
You just knew it.
I just knew it. And we were kind of kicking around, and we saw one of the sheriff's deputies' car go up there, and I went and flagged him down and asked him if he had been working the night she got killed. And he said yes, and I told him that she was a friend of mine, and I said to him, I know this is going to sound morbid, but what side of her body did the truck impact her on? He told me that the initial strike hit her on the right side, fracturing her pelvis. She flipped up over the truck and landed on her head and was killed immediately. Now, this was within 5 minutes. This was the night before I fell over. This was in 5 minutes of that time that the time of death was pronounced. And my belief is that she came to me and said goodbye. And it was just too weird. And a friend of mine, if you'd like, he was there. I told him if he would like, he could call back and verify, because he was there. And he was kind of freaked out as the couple days where we talked to the sheriff's deputy and stuff.
I'm just convinced it happens. People come back. People do come back, and they do say goodbye.
My friend and I are researching a book on, we're going to be writing a book basically on poltergeist and demonology. And I was wondering if either I could give you an address that people could write letters to, because we're looking for input, or if you would prefer that I mailed it to you.
Well, if I were you, I would roll a tape on this program.
Okay, well, I realize.
All right. Otherwise, I'll see what I can do.
Okay.
All right, thank you. You might want to, you really might want to get a copy of this program. Because these are some of the most serious stories that I've ever heard. And I don't know where you could go to get a better rendition. Stuff that would just put the hackles right down the back. This is pretty good this morning. Good morning. On our first-time caller line, you're on the air. Where are you, please?
I'm calling from Denver.
Welcome to the program.
Thank you. Art, I want to tell you that Ouija board, if you mess with that, it happened to me when I was 9 years old. It's an entrance for a satanic spirit to enter your body. And Dr. Ken Olson, who was on the Maury Povich show.
Maury Povich.
Yes, sir. Thank you. He was the person that released that terrible demonic spirit. And it happened to me when I was 9 through age 54, the worst type of satanic deprivation that could ever enter a human body. And I'm telling you, leave it alone. Don't allow anyone to touch or be around or play around with the Ouija board. Because if you don't have someone like Dr. Ken Olson, who is an exorcist, a vessel of Jesus Christ, he is an instrument of God. To pray to release that, it can cause the worst type of nightmares that you could ever have, and the worst type of life that you could ever have. And I want to tell you the truth, then your listeners, to never be around the Ouija board or allow any type of activity.
Well, I'm glad you gave everybody else the caution. I don't need it. Believe me, I've got that caution. Thank you for the call. That's Denver. And heed what that man says. Ouija boards are bizarre things that do seem to, use the word door, open the door, open a channel, open a conduit for things that you really don't want around you. Line 3, you're on the air.
Hey, I'm calling from
Reno, oh, KOH, yes.
And it concerns the old mining camp in Virginia City, where the big mines, excuse me, the big mines been abandoned for many years, but there are 700 miles of shafts, drifts, and winches underground. 200 miles of the labyrinth. And I was having lunch with my parents in Virginia City, and knocking at the back door, and in came an old friend of my dad's, very agitated. A big lump in his forehead, it was split, his cuts, and blood was coming down, so folks patched him up. And he, like many of the old retired miners, he liked to roam through the abandoned mines, pick samples out and stuff like that. And he was in the mine called the Ward Mine, southeast of Virginia City.
Is that W-A-R-D, Ward?
Yes.
Uh-huh.
And I think he had his carbide lamp in his hat. And he turned the corner and come down a corridor. There, it was kind of illuminated, was a man buried up almost to his head, he's in dirt. His arms were free and he was shaking them and waving his head back and forth. His face was contorted, and obviously a cave in there. Our friend was so startled that he turned around and started to run the timber over the top, over the roof of the mine, and he ran into it. That's where he got that knock in the head. Well, when he told the story around town, people just laughed. He must have bumped his head first.
Sure.
Several years later, mining engineers were looking at the maps of the old mines, and they were examining the ward, and it has all the details. And he said, my goodness, there was a fatal cave-in in the tunnel number so-and-so.
That is really eerie.
True.
That's really eerie. I understand, sir. I understand. I really thank you for the call.
Okay, Art.
And so there you go. There is a mining story. A man buried almost to his head, who had died violently and quickly and unexpectedly. The worrisome part, of course, of that is, if that is to be the manner of your death or mine, would we be forever trapped here on Earth, such a destined to repeat such a gruesome experience again and again? Though it wasn't something that was from some deviant behavior that we exhibited, but simply the unlucky moment of a mine caving in on us. Line 1, you're on the air.
Good morning, Art. Call. Been listening to this program. So I'll give you an experience. A couple of years ago, coming in on 163, I was approaching Level Canyon turnoff. And you know where the old Christmas tree used to be?
Yes.
Okay, it was right after that fire. It was lightning, and we were joking around as we were driving, and I said, you know, and defiantly, like, just show me that you're out there. And a couple times the lightning struck, and so finally again I said, you know...
Just show me that you're out there, meaning God?
Well, a superior being, yeah.
Oh,
God, who knows? Well, anyway, to make a long story short, we were just joking around, and again, like I said, it's sort of like a challenge, you know, make me a believer. And about that time, literally, two bolts of lightning came right across the front of the truck and hit the side of the road about, maybe 400 yards up from where we were traveling. And it was just like out of a Star Wars. I mean, it was one bolt from one side of the car and one from the other. And we pulled over, sat there for about 5 minutes, and drove on up to Mountain Pass. And like I said...
Tell me something. Had you said this mentally crying out, or had you said it aloud?
We were talking about... And in the conversation, I said it out loud. I told him, I said, Bill, I said, you know, just show me out there, God. If you're out there, make me a believer. And, you know, a couple strikes around us, but then, you know, well, that was close. Give me another sign. Make sure that you can hear me, you know.
Well, I'm glad you didn't ask for absolute truth.
Well, tell you what, I've never asked for something again that I didn't want.
What a story. Now, how has this affected you, and how has it affected Bill?
Well, we talk about it occasionally, and like I said, we just look at each other and shake our heads. Like to me, it's a thing in life now. I don't ask for anything that, you know, in a joking manner anymore.
It's been said, be careful what you wish for.
Yeah, it might come true.
Thank you for the story. Take care. That was quite a story. That's a local story, too. It's a road I travel every day. And it's a dark road. And it's a dangerous road that I travel, Highway 160. I do about 120 miles a day on it. There have been a lot of people killed. There are a lot of crosses placed on the roadside to designate the place where it's occurred. I've never seen anything yet. Good morning. On the first-time caller line, you're on the air.
Hi, I'm calling from Genoa, Nevada.
Where in Nevada?
Genoa.
Genoa, Nevada.
Genoa.
Where is that?
It is just about 10 miles south of Carson City. It's the first Nevada settlement.
Very good.
And anyway, this was about 2 years ago. My story, I'm a recovering alcoholic, and I was going out with a girl who had just got into recovery, and we were in counseling, and we were doing a bunch of inner child work. And, you know, one of the reasons we got along so well, our therapist says, because we played so well together. Well, this whole relationship went sour, and she began dating this other man, and they were going to move to Cleveland, Ohio. And anyway, so one night, I'm laying in my bed, and this therapy work that we're doing with inner child, you have to close your eyes and imagine this child and you know, what that child was doing at the time. And I was laying in my bed, and my eyes were open, and all of a sudden, this little girl, about 8 years old, she had a pixie haircut and she was wearing shorts and a small halter top, came up, and she was standing right next to my bed, and my eyes were wide open. And it was just my girlfriend was like, you know, a smaller version of her, right? And this girl, without opening her lips or anything, said, you know, to me, I've come to play with Chris, who was like, and that's my name and my inner child. So anyway, this little girl is standing there, and she's talking to me. She says, and I'm leaving, I'm moving, and I wanted to come and play. And so she starts taking off with this other little kid. I'm assuming it was me. and they're running, and all of a sudden then I don't see walls in my room or anything. I just see them out like in a field running.
Wow.
And I keep saying this out loud to this girl who I was since not dated. Gary, do you feel this? I was wondering if there was a connection between her and me.
Right.
And I kept saying, do you feel this? Are you here? Do you know, are you seeing what I'm seeing? And then after they got done playing, this went on for, I'm going to guess 10 minutes. And then the little girl walked back up and said thank you, and that she was leaving, and that, you know, hopefully she would come back to see us again. And I had told her, I mean, I'm talking directly to this. She was transparent, but she was still standing right there. And I was telling her, I said, you can come back anytime you want. It was not a fear thing. I was not afraid.
Why not? Because I guess because it was somebody you knew, somebody you know.
Right, I think so. And she was just, you know, 8 years old, 9 years old, and just real shy, and you know.
I would like to think I could react as you did. I'm going to have to leave the line because we're out of time. I thank you for the call. I would like to think that I would react that way. And maybe, if it was somebody that I had known, somebody that I was comfortable with, and the experience felt benign, maybe I would be. But I'm not sure of that. Line 2, you're on the air.
Hi, Art.
Hello.
Joe in Las Vegas.
Yes, sir.
I'd like to relate an experience I had. First, I'd like to see if I can jog your memory. Last time I called in was, a year or so ago. I put out a question over the year, and it's somewhat apropos tonight also. The question that you put out was, that night was, what do you think the purpose of life is?
That's right.
And my call to you was a story that was related to me, and I told you at the time, I wasn't sure I believed or accepted it, is that we were, this is where I want to see if I can jog your memory, that we were all gods and goddesses, and we had everything and could do everything, and so we decided to play a game, and the game was called Life, and part of the rules of the game.
I remember.
Yeah, okay.
You're right. The question and tonight's topic go together very well. Go ahead, Nick.
Some years ago, in the late 60s, I was living in Los Angeles, and I made a couple of acquaintances. They had a small business going. One was a writer, the other was a printer, an artist, and they had made up copies of a poster that they came up with. And in our dealings, they asked that would I sell the poster for them. I agreed to, and for a while I sold it around the Los Angeles area to bookstores and so on. And then they suggested, why don't you make a trip to the Bay Area, San Francisco, and see how it would go up there. It was during the time of the Haight-Ashbury things, during the hippie days.
Remember the time.
And so I agreed to the trip, and I went up there, and the evening that I arrived in San Francisco, before I decided to go to a hotel room, I decided to eat in a restaurant, and then after that I went to a piano bar. I thought I'd kind of rest for a while and listen to some music, and a fellow sitting next to me at the piano bar and I got to talking, and I let him know that I was up from L.A., and he said, well, you don't have to get a hotel room. There's a house that I know of that isn't being occupied right now, and I've got the key, and you're welcome to use it. I went to the house, and it was on a street of the old Victorian homes that are so frequent in San Francisco. This was about the middle of the block, and it was the only one in a whole row of Victorian homes on that block that was set in from the others. I thought that was interesting. I went up the porch and unlocked the door and turned on a light and went inside.
Right.
But as I entered, I got a very uneasy feeling in my gut. And as I got further into the place, into the house, that feeling got stronger. And I just figured, oh, well.
Uneasy as in you shouldn't be there?
Yeah, exactly.
All right, listen, we're short on time. So.
Oh, I wanted to get the story out. Anyway, so I walked into the kitchen, and which is all the way in the back, and There were windows, multi-windows, and a window door, and I opened the door and was going to step out, and I paused, and I looked down, and there were no stairs, and it was about 10 feet straight down. I then proceeded into the living room, and I got a much more uneasy feeling.
We're about to run out of time.
I went up the stairs slowly, and I got to the head of the stairs. There was 2 bedrooms. Could not enter either of the bedrooms. I just had to leave. It became unbearable to be there, even though my mind was saying, there's nothing wrong here, there's nothing wrong here. I just couldn't stay. It was extremely uncomfortable.
All right, we're going to have to hold it there. Thank you very much for the call, and good morning. Have you ever had that happen? Something inside of you so strongly compelling you to leave, telling you that something is urgently, terribly, profoundly wrong. Good morning. First-time caller line. You're on the air.
Good morning, Art Bell.
Yes. Where are you calling?
This is Pablo.
Pablo and Canada. Yes, you have something that relates to all this, Pablo?
Yes, I do.
That's amazing. All right, let's hear it.
Usually, people that enter into my domain receive an eerie feeling when they see all of the murals, and
I can only imagine what your area looks like.
But there's one room in my house that is a shrine to you-know-who.
Hitler.
Yes. And when you walk in, the presence is so strong that the power, you feel the power.
Thank you, Pablo. That is Pablo, who is in Canada. He's up in the Edmonton area, I believe. And Pablo is a Nazi. He really is a Nazi. And he was talking about what he does now. And his shrine, I don't have to be there to imagine what it is like. And I can easily imagine that it imparts the exact feeling that he was just talking.
Today's episode of the Y-Files is brought to you by Established Titles. Everyone's heard of Area 51, the top-secret facility in the Nevada desert. But nobody really knows what happens there. We have only rumors. One rumor is that alien bodies have been recovered from UFO crashes. Those aliens have been autopsied and the subjects of medical experiments for years. But have you ever heard of Dulce Base? Dulce is more secret than Area 51, and more sinister. If Area 51 is the place where humans experiment on aliens, Dulce is the place where aliens experiment on us. Dulce is a town in New Mexico near the Colorado border on the Jicarilla Apache Reservation. The town is small, with fewer than 3,000 people. The area has the largest number of UFO sightings per capita in the world. The stories of strange lights and objects in the sky go back as far as the first people to inhabit the area thousands of years ago. Newer stories claim there's an underground base within the Archuleta Mesa near Dulce. Though there's never been evidence of this base, there are quite a few people who've come forward over the years that indicate something is happening in the area. There are witnesses who claim to have worked on the construction of the base, worked at the base, and some who've seen it from the air. There are even people who have claimed to have seen the base from the inside, after being taken there against their will. In 1975, a rancher in Dulce called the police in a panic. One of his cattle had been killed. At first, he thought it was a predator, but predators don't do this. Officer Gabe Valdez responded to the call. He couldn't believe what he found. The cow was drained of all its blood and had undergone a procedure where many of its organs were surgically removed. And around the cow's carcass were tracks in the soil that looked like they came from the feet of a tripod. Next to each of the tracks, the ground was scorched, indicating there was an aircraft that could take off and land vertically. In the tracks, there was a yellow, oily substance that couldn't be identified by the land. It seemed as if the tripods, whatever they were, followed the cow for about 600 feet. Valdez was able to see where the cow had struggled before this happened. Valdez knew this was a little outside of his lane, so he contacted Dr. Howard Burgess of Sandia National Labs. Dr. Burgess arrived 72 hours later to assist. Though 3 days had passed, the cow wasn't decomposing, and predators and scavengers wouldn't go near it. And at some point during those 3 days, one of the cow's ears was removed. Over the following months, 17 animals would be killed this way. All were missing their lymph nodes, all were missing multiple organs, and all taken surgically. All the animals were drained of blood, and the little blood that remained wouldn't clot, not even after several days. Soon, investigators started to become sick. Even people who visited the range complained about headaches and nausea. This gave Dr. Burgess the idea to test radiation levels in the area, and radiation was twice what it should be. And during this time, investigators working at night saw orange lights moving silently in the sky. Investigators working during the day saw black helicopters circling overhead. Valdez wondered if this was more than a local phenomenon. He looked for cases of animal mutilation in the surrounding areas. And over the course of a few years, an estimated 80,000 animal mutilations were reported. Now, I was able to find the official FBI report on this, which I'll link below. And despite everything I've told you about the condition of these animals, the FBI said, quote, "It was consistent with predator action, and there is no federal interest in continuing an investigation."
The only predator that can do this is the predator.
What predator is that?
Oh, you know, from the movies, with the face like a scongeal.
Why do you bring that up? Where was that predator from?
Another planet?
Well...
Oh, if it bleeds, we can kill it.
Paul Benowitz was born in 1922, and when World War II broke out, he joined the Coast Guard as a teenager. He had a master's degree in physics and was pursuing his PhD when he worked at an electronics company in Albuquerque, New Mexico. Paul Benowitz's primary clients were the Air Force and NASA. He did so much business with the Air Force that he actually bought a home and established a lab right next to Kirtland Air Force Base. And we have an entire episode that covers him and how he was misled and abused by the United States government. Link below. Kirtland Air Force Base is a massive complex, spanning over 80 square miles. Over 20,000 people work on the base. Kirtland also happens to be the largest storage facility for nuclear weapons in the Western Hemisphere. On the grounds are the Manzano Mountains, and under the Manzanos are 80 underground bunkers, including a presidential emergency shelter. Connecting the bunkers are over 40 separate tunnels, though nobody knows for sure how many. The people who built the facility were not allowed to tell anyone about what they were working on. Paul Benowitz was a gifted engineer and was interested in UFOs. From Paul's second-floor balcony, he observed and filmed strange lights in the sky. He also recorded radio transmissions that seemed to be alien in origin. Paul occasionally worked for several UFO groups, including the Aerial Phenomena Research Organization, known as APRO. Even though UFO research wasn't yet mainstream, APRO was a respected organization known for scientifically grounded research. In 1979, Paul attended a conference in Albuquerque where he met Officer Gabe Valdez. They traded stories about cattle mutilations, alien abductions, and UFO sightings that were happening in the area. Gabe Valdez and Paul Benowitz struck up a friendship. Valdez was basically the go-to cop for any strange phenomenon in the area, and Paul was compiling more and more data that aliens were real, were here, and were very interested in Kirtland Air Force Base. In 1980, Valdez caught the Myrna Hansen case and asked Paul Benowitz for help. Myrna Hansen claimed to have had a terrifying experience. When she was driving to her home in Eagles Nest, New Mexico, both she and her son saw 2 UFOs over a field. They left the car running and got out to take a closer look. They saw a cow grazing in the field get lifted into one of the UFOs by a beam of light. The next thing she knew, Myrna and her son were back in the car, the engine off, and hours had passed. But what happened during those hours, she had trouble remembering. And what she did remember, she had trouble discussing. So Gabe and Paul brought in a psychology professor to place Myrna under hypnosis to see if she could access these suppressed memories. The hypnosis session began, and based on what Myrna Hansen remembered, she had every reason to be terrified. Myrna Hansen remembered that as she was driving and saw very bright lights in the sky, she and her son got out of the car to see what they were. The lights were coming from a floating craft and were affecting a herd of cattle. One cow seemed to be struggling and panicking as it was levitated up into one of the objects. Then she remembered that she was abducted and given a thorough and very violating physical examination. And though her abductors never spoke, she recalls hearing them in her mind. They said she was taken by accident, but now that she was here, they had no choice but to continue with the procedure. She described their appearance as what we now call a gray alien. She also reported being taken to an underground base, and there she saw body parts floating in vats of bubbling liquid, and she remembered a terrible smell. The alien abduction stories are unfortunately fairly common now, but in 1980 this was very unusual. And then Myrna remembered something really disturbing, something that could be confirmed. She said a device was surgically implanted into her body, and she believed this was so the aliens could track her and control her mind. Now, this could be checked. Myrna was taken to the nearby Lovelace Medical Center and x-rayed. At the base of her skull, right where she said it would be, was the implant. Myrna also had a very faint scar on the back of her neck. Now, to be fair, the doctors thought it was a natural growth, though they didn't know what kind. The doctors might not have been convinced, but Myrna Hansen, Gabe Valdez, and Paul Benowitz were. There was an alien presence focused on the Kirtland Air Force Base and on the town of Dulce not far away. Now remember, Paul Benowitz was reporting everything he saw to the Air Force. Richard Doty, an agent working for the Air Force Office of Special Investigation, or OSI, was assigned to Paul's case. And Doty and Paul spent so much time together that they became personal friends. Paul showed Richard Doty sketches that Myrna Hansen made of what she saw while she was abducted. She drew hallways, elevators, rooms, and laboratories. Then Doty confirmed that her drawings matched the Manzano Weapons Storage Complex, which was an underground facility. And over the next 20 years, more and more information would emerge that confirmed not only are aliens on Earth, but they're also working with the United States government. But when did this partnership begin? And why would the government be working with aliens, and for what goal? Well, in 1995, we would get our answer when Phil Schneider, an engineer who helped build Dulce Base, blew the whistle. And it's darker than you could possibly imagine. In 2021, the Pentagon budget was $750 billion. And since 1996, the American military has received $8.5 trillion in taxpayer dollars and never has had to account for any of it. In 2016, an investigation discovered that the Pentagon was covering up $125 billion in so-called wasted dollars. Now, if the military budget comes up short in a given year, whatever number that is just written in. It's called a plug, and then boom, balanced budget.
You try that with your taxes and see how that works out for you.
Well, they throw you in jail. But there's evidence that the money is not being wasted. It's actually part of the Pentagon's black budget. In 1995, at the Preparedness Expo, Phil Schneider blew the whistle on one of the most secret black budget programs in history.
On the southwest part of the Archuleta Mesa, we built an underground facility, better part of 3 cubic miles, hollowed out underground. We were in the process of the early stages of building. We drilled 4 large tunnel-like holes. Some of them ran 2.5 miles under the surface. The equipment kept coming up broken. So we wanted to go down, we wanted to send somebody down there, a human observer, or human observers in this case, to find out what was going on.
In 1979, Schneider was working for Morrison Knudsen on a geology team, digging exploratory shafts for a new underground base in Dulce. And though working with heavy-duty equipment, the drills kept breaking. Once a drill punched through, Phil described black, sooty air billowing up through the opening, and the air smelled like rotten garbage. Phil put on a protective suit and headed down the lift to investigate. And on the way, walking through camp, he noticed there were an awful lot of armed troops.
When I saw Green Beret and Black Beret people encamped inside of our geologist camp, I knew something was up.
When Phil reached the bottom, he was face to face with a 7-foot-tall gray alien. He said its stench was worse than anything he'd ever smelled before. Then another alien appeared. Phil panicked, grabbed his pistol, and started firing. And he managed to kill one of the aliens, but the others started firing back. Phil was hit with what he called a plasma weapon and lost 2 fingers and part of his left hand. And this plasma weapon also gave him cancer.
Never bring a gun to a plasma fight.
That's good advice. Now, Phil thought he was dead when suddenly a Green Beret who had followed him down grabbed him and put him on the lift. Now, Phil made it, but nobody else did. 66 men lost their lives in what was called the Battle of Dulce Base. The American military had accidentally drilled into an alien base that had been there for 400 or 500 years. So now the military had a choice to make: go to war with the aliens or cooperate with them. Now, winning a war against entities with such advanced technology wasn't possible, so a deal was struck. Aliens would give advanced technology to humans.
And what did the humans have to give to the aliens?
Well, humans would have to give the aliens other humans.
Our United States government lied to not tell us anything about the alien threat. There's a war underneath there, and I'm talking dead serious.
Phil Schneider was an outspoken advocate for government transparency about the alien presence on Earth. He became well known on the UFO lecture circuit, giving talks about his time working on top-secret government projects. He's most known for his talk at the 1995 Preparedness Expo, where he revealed all kinds of information. As of 1995, there were 131 active secret underground bases in the United States and 1,477 around the world. All the bases in the United States are connected by magnetic levitation trains that can reach speeds of Mach 2. Phil said that there are 7 benevolent alien species currently living on Earth, and 4 evil species. He said that the U.S. government signed 4 treaties with the aliens, in 1944, in 1954, 1962, and the last one in 1979 after the Dulce Battle. The treaty signed in 1954, called the Greada Treaty, was signed between the U.S. government and a species of gray aliens. And the treaty says aliens would be allowed to abduct and experiment on humans as long as the U.S. government, specifically the committee known as Majestic 12, was informed and provided a list of abductees.
The government sure does like making lists of people, huh?
It sure does.
But why it is so many abductions? Don't aliens know how boring humans are?
Well, according to Phil Schneider, at least 9 races of aliens view humans as a food source.
It's a cookbook.
It's a cookbook.
Classic Twilight Zone episode. But the aliens don't consume human flesh. Instead, they use the secretions of glands from mammals. This species of alien suffers from a genetic disorder, and the enzymes in mammal hormones keep the aliens healthy. And some alien races use human adrenaline as a recreational intoxicant.
Ugh, they get high from human secretions?
They do.
Yeah, that's a hard pass for me.
Me too. Now, in exchange for access to humans for experimentation, the aliens would provide the United States with advanced technology. According to Phil Schneider, military technology is 1,200 years ahead of what civilians have now. Stealth technology came from aliens. The U.S. government now has the ability to create special metal alloys, but they can only be created in the vacuum of space. The U.S. military has a device that causes earthquakes. The 1989 San Francisco earthquake and the 1995 Kobe earthquake were weapons tests.
They go to score, and he fails to get Dave Parker at second base, so the Oakland A's take. I'll tell you what, we're having an
Now, Phil Schneider makes all kinds of other claims. He said the bombings of the World Trade Center in 1993 and the Oklahoma City bombing of 1995 were done with miniature nuclear devices provided by the aliens. He said AIDS and other viruses were created as a means of controlling the population.
All right, hold on. I gotta stop you there.
What?
You expect me to believe that a government would artificially create a dangerous virus in a lab? My friend, that is a bridge too far.
Sarcasm?
Yes, of course it's sarcasm.
Phil Schneider believed that all this was happening for one purpose: to establish a new world order. The alien plan is to completely take over the planet and eliminate almost 90% of the world's population.
Ooh, this is the kind of talk that makes the men in black come a knocking.
That's true. And Phil Schneider said he was under constant surveillance by the government. He even claimed he was attacked by an FBI agent and killed the agent in self-defense. And he reported this to the FBI, but nothing came of it.
No, because the government would have to admit to all this stuff.
That's right. Phil was constantly in fear for his life. He said he had 11 close friends all die under mysterious circumstances, but every death was ruled suicide. In fact, Phil Schneider told his friends and family over and over, if I ever end up dead, I didn't kill myself. It was murder. He was adamant about this.
Yeah, I can't help notice that you keep speaking about this guy in the past tense.
Well, in January 1996, just 4 months after he gave his famous lecture, Phil Schneider was found dead in his apartment.
No, come on.
Apparently, he had taken his own life.
Oh, come on.
There's a good chance that when I fly back to to Vegas, I have to drive home. I left my car down in Vegas. I have to drive home alone. I'm scared to hell.
Phil Schneider was constantly worried. He told his family that if he was ever found dead, to not believe the story, that it was murder. A few weeks after that, Phil Schneider was found dead in his apartment. At first, his death was ruled unknown, even though he had a medical tube wrapped around his neck. And a lot of details about his death don't add up. First, there was no note. Also, he had enough pills on hand to die painlessly. He also had a gun. The medical tube was wrapped around his throat 3 times and then tied in a knot under his chin. Now, strangling yourself this way seems difficult, especially in Phil's case. He was missing half of his left hand. His shoulders had limited motion. He had brittle bone syndrome from cancer and spent a lot of time in a wheelchair. He was a weak and frail man. The medical examiner, for some reason, refused to visit the scene, though he was legally required to. He did take blood and urine samples, but refused to test them because he said it was a waste of time. And when Phil's family inquired about those samples, they were told they were sent to an independent lab and were now missing. When Phil's ex-wife Cynthia went to collect his belongings, everything was gone. Recordings of Phil's lectures, photographs, research, even physical evidence from Dulce Base. It was all missing. And then something very strange happened. An obituary appeared in the local paper saying Phil died of a stroke. Phil's family didn't write that obituary. So who did?
Any senator, House of Representative, person, President of the United States, Vice President, any cabinet member lying to the American public is a traitor and should be dealt with in an appropriate fashion.
Phil Schneider wasn't the only person who claimed to know about Dulce Base. Thomas Castello was a military photographer with top-secret clearance, and he specialized in photographing sensitive projects. Castello worked at an underground facility near Nellis Air Force Base in Nevada, most likely Area 51. He also worked at Dulce Base. In 1987, Castello turned whistleblower, and before he left Dulce Base, he stole a set of documents that were eventually called the Dulce Papers. He also stole 30 black and white photos as well as videotape.
There are several things you should know about. I took an oath under penalty of death that no matter what I saw or heard, I would never divulge the information. At the Dulce Base, treason is anything that mentions the details of daily operations at this facility when outside the confinement of this base. When I first arrived, the story they told us was that this is a tri-biotransfer facility with advanced technology doing advanced, adventurous methodology for medical and mental gains, which is a fancy way of saying they do really risky things with human life just to see what would happen.
This is the most famous Castello photograph, humans in pods.
What the hell's going on here?
Well, you know how aliens harvest human hormones for various purposes?
Yeah, I'm trying to forget it, but yeah.
Well, these are cloning bats. Much easier to use humans as a food source when you could just grow them in a tube. And Castello was the first person to show us the different floors of Dulce Base and what they were used for. Level 1 is security and communications. Level 2 is human staff and housing.
Wait a minute. If there's a floor labeled human staff, then that means...
There is housing for non-human staff.
No!
Level 3 is executive offices and labs. Level 4 is mind control experiments. Level 5 is alien housing. Level 6 is genetic experiments and the zoo.
What, the zoo?
Oh yeah. When genetic splicing between humans and aliens was successful, they would often put the hybrid creature on display.
Oh boy.
And level 7 is cryogenics and cold storage. Yeah?
This story, this is a lot.
Oh, have you had too much?
Oh, wait, there's more?
Oh, much more.
The alien agenda is the complete takeover of this planet, the killing off of 5, 6 to 7/8 of the world's population by the year 2029. The U.S. military has known about this for 45 years. They've told no one.
Most of the information we get from Costello comes from a single interview he gave called the Branton Interview, and I'll link the full text below. Apparently there were, or are, over 180,000 aliens working in the facility. Costello gives us details about how the base is administered, and there are many different races that work there, and they're divided into ruling castes and worker castes.
Well, obviously humans are workers.
Obviously. But there are also alien worker castes, and ultimately all races report to a single ruling class called the Draco.
That sounds like...
Lizard people.
Lizard people! Yes! Hey, speaking of lizard people, now is a great time to pick up a Hecklefish Lizard People mug. It makes a great gift.
What are you doing?
What? Someone's got to do the plugs? Go to shop.thewifiles.com and grab your Lizard People mug today.
Anyway, the Draco...
Lizard people.
The lizard people are not alien. They evolved from reptiles and dinosaurs and have remained hidden. They created the underground tunnel system hundreds or thousands of years ago. And in the 1960s, they were made to be more suitable to humans and other races that the Draco created.
Created?
Oh, yeah. The Draco created races for labor.
The worker caste does the daily chores, mopping away text floors, cleaning the cages, bringing food to the hungry people and other species. It is their job to formulate the proper mixture for the Type 1 and Type 2 beings that the Draco race has created. The working caste work at the labs as well as at the computer banks. Basically speaking, the reptilian races are active at all levels of the Dulce base. There are several different races of aliens that work on the east section of Level 6.
Thomas Costello lived the rest of his life in hiding in Europe. He's since passed away, but if you're interested in hearing more from him, I'll post a link to a message board where he answers a lot more questions. And I just scratched the surface here. His interview is the rabbitest of rabbit holes.
Rabbitest?
Shut up.
Oy vey.
John Lear might have had a more interesting life than his father, William Lear, who invented the Learjet. John Lear was a pilot who broke 17 world records in many types of aircraft. He flew cargo planes for the CIA in the 60s and 70s. John Lear was also one of the most visible proponents of the theory that not only are aliens here on Earth, but they're also colluding with the United States government. Lear became interested in UFOs in 1986 after talking with U.S. Air Force personnel who witnessed the UFO landing at Bentwaters Air Force Base near London. In that encounter, 3 small aliens walked right up to Wing Commander General Gordon Williams, and that became known as the Rendlesham Forest Incident. In 1988, Lear released a document titled UFO Cover-Up that exposed all kinds of secret government and alien activity. It's essentially a manifesto, and I'll link to the original text below. Lear covers the death of James Forrestal, Majestic 12, Roswell, abductions, cattle mutilations, and, of course, Dulce Base. Lear said that he gathered 4 independent confirmations that the 7-story Dulce Base complex was real. He even detailed the different species of aliens who live and work there.
The problem is not only just the fact that there are 5 and as many as 10 different civilizations visiting us. Apparently, and this is from the research that I've done, at least 90% of them are hostile. And when I say hostile, if not hostile, they have a completely different set of morals than we do.
John Lear believed that, based on evidence, aliens are trying to regenerate their own race at our expense. He said they suffered a nuclear holocaust or severe illness that caused their entire race to weaken. This is why, according to John Lear, aliens are attempting to crossbreed with humans. In fact, he said this was successfully done 7 times over several years. Lear discusses the book Intruders by Bud Hopkins. Hopkins spent years studying abduction cases and was one of the first to reveal that human females were being used to gestate alien or alien-human hybrid children. This was information Hopkins learned through interviewing and hypnotizing hundreds of abductees. Now, obviously, John Lear didn't subscribe to the theory that aliens are here to protect us from nuclear war or help us in any way. Aliens are here to use us as livestock, as breeding chambers, and as subjects of horrible experiments. And what's even more frightening is the United States government is complicit in all of this. John Lear ended his document by saying, "The best advice I can give you is, next time you see a flying saucer and are awed by its obvious display of technology, run like hell."
In 1947, the Air Technical Intelligence Center at Dayton, the top Air Force intelligence men and scientists under contract, sent a secret document to the commanding general of the Air Force saying that whatever these things were, they were real.
And it started out with a crash at Roswell.
1947 is what the public has been told. Something crashed in the backyard in New Mexico, a place called Roswell, New Mexico. Unfortunately, that's what the public's been told. The military's known about the alien question for the better part of 70 years.
And a second crash site that occurred in Magdalena, or Horse Mesa, out west of Magdalena, New Mexico.
And I have found out that the government has retrieved between 10 and 15 actual flying saucers, 3 of which have been in perfect condition, 1 of which they tried to fly.
And I know that they were reverse engineering. I was never actually briefed on it, but you know, common sense can tell me that this craft over here isn't something we made. It was reverse engineered.
Reverse engineered.
Yeah. They trained 9 months before they ever flew it. And then they trained another, I can't remember how long, 4 or 5 months, flying it all around Nevada. And it worked fine.
I'm not attacking the United States Air Force. I'm attacking a small group in there that has been persistently keeping this from the public, just as they've kept other things.
The Air Force has made an art form of
off of the day the Earth stood still. The photo Phil uses is supposedly his father in the ready room of the USS Eldridge because his father was part of the Philadelphia experiment. Because of course he was. But there's no room that large on a Cannon-class destroyer. Also, the Philadelphia experiment happened in the 40s. The lights in this picture wouldn't be used until the 1960s. And there are lots more holes in the story. And Phil Schneider had a documented history of mental illness. Now, his story sounds like paranoid delusions. He says 28% of the US GDP is used for black ops. 28% is very specific. Why not 25 or 30? How does he even know that number? The people who work in Black Ops don't know the Pentagon's budget. Nobody does, but somehow Phil knows? People with delusions often create rich worlds full of specific details. Now, Phil Schneider very well could have been telling the truth. I just don't think so. I think he suffered a psychotic break in dealing with his cancer diagnosis and latched onto the Dulce Base story as a way to take control of his life and as a way to attain some notoriety. That all said, his death was weird. If you trace back the history of the Dulce Base story, you'll always end up with a person named James Bishop, whose real name was allegedly Tal Levesque. Now, the book Saucers, Spooks, and Kooks, UFO Disinformation in the Age of Aquarius, written by Adam Gorightly, identifies Levesque as the chief architect of the Dulce Base story. In the 70s, Levesque published a newsletter called Hollow Earth Hassle, which was about creatures living inside the Earth. And those stories were based on a story called The Shaver Mystery, which appeared in science fiction pulp magazines in 1947. And the story took off after Paul Benowitz claimed he discovered alien transmissions coming from Dulce Base. A woman named Ann West created the Tom Costello character, probably based somewhat on what Paul Benowitz said. Now, she claimed that a lot of her information was coming from someone named Tom Costello, but all the information was coming from Levesque. And you won't be surprised to hear that no record of anyone named Thomas Costello was found in the U.S. military during the time he was supposed to be there. According to Levesque, various researchers would latch onto the Dulce Base story and then add their own flair, each person building on the story of the people who came before them. And by the way, that super creepy photo of the humans in alien pods, Thomas Costello didn't take that picture. It's actually a screenshot of the film The Sixth Day, released in 2000. Now, why would Levesque do this? Well, he passed away in 2018, but he said it was his job, whatever that means. We know for a fact that Agent Richard Doty of the Air Force OSI perpetrated a misinformation campaign against Paul Benowitz. And this campaign included confirming Paul's suspicion about the underground base and confirming the drawings by abductee Myrna Hansen. Now, was Levesque part of this government operation? We don't know. John Lear also circulated this story. And at one UFO convention, Lear met with other UFO researchers who were going to release a public statement about what they knew to be true. Apparently, Lear's claims were so outlandish, the other researchers wouldn't sign on to it. Lear stormed out of the convention.
You have to get pretty wild when people at a UFO convention don't believe you.
You sure do. Bill Moore, a UFO researcher who worked with Richard Doty and the government on the misinformation campaign, he said Lear was an intelligence agent. And remember, Lear did have a long history of working with the CIA. Now, this is the problem with these stories. UFOs, underground bases, alien experiments. As long as the research is considered fringe, most of the people working in the field are going to be fringe. They don't give out Nobel Prizes for UFO research.
They should.
They should, and maybe one day they will, but until then, UFO researchers will be criticized and ostracized by mainstream scientists. Now, me and you want to believe, but there's nobody to trust. We know for a fact that Richard Doty ran a misinformation campaign against Benowitz and the entire UFO community, feeding them wild stories about aliens and underground bases. But later, Doty said the stories were mostly true. So now we're left in this position where we don't know who or what to believe. We do know that the U.S. government wants it this way. Now, I believe there are secret bases all over the United States. Is there one in Dulce? I don't know. There are lots of UFO stories that I want to be true, but this isn't one of them. Abductions, genetic experiments, organ harvesting, and a new world order? We better hope Phil Schneider, John Lear, Myrna Hansen, and all these other witnesses are wrong. Because if they're not, we're in big trouble.
A short time ago, the United States military began major combat operations in Iran. Our objective is to defend the American people by eliminating imminent threats from the Iranian regime. A short time ago, the United States military began major combat operations in Iran. Our objective is to defend the American people by eliminating imminent threats from the Iranian regime, a vicious group of very hard terrible people. Its menacing activities directly endanger the United States, our troops, our bases overseas, and our allies throughout the world. For 47 years, the Iranian regime has chanted death to America and waged an unending campaign of bloodshed and mass murder, targeting the United States, our troops, and the innocent people in many, many countries. Among the regime's very first acts was to back a violent takeover of the U.S. Embassy in Tehran, holding dozens of American hostages for 444 days. In 1983, Iran's proxies carried out the Marine barracks bombing in Beirut that killed 241 American military personnel. In 2000, they knew and were probably involved with the attack on the USS Cole. Many died. Iranian forces killed and maimed hundreds of American service members in Iraq. The regime's proxies have continued to launch countless attacks against American forces stationed in the Middle East in recent years, as well as U.S. naval and commercial vessels in international shipping lanes. It's been mass terror, and we're not going to put up with it any longer. From Lebanon to Yemen and Syria to Iraq, the regime has armed, trained, and funded terrorist militias that have soaked the earth with blood and guts. And it was Iran's proxy, Hamas, that launched the monstrous October 7th attacks on Israel, slaughtering more than 1,000 innocent people, including 46 Americans, while taking 12 of our citizens hostage. It was brutal, something like the world has never seen before. Iran is the world's #1 state sponsor of terror and just recently killed tens of thousands of its own citizens on the street as they protested. It has always been the policy of the United States, in particular my administration, that this terrorist regime can never have a nuclear weapon. I'll say it again, they can never have a nuclear weapon. That is why in Operation Midnight Hammer last June, we obliterated the regime's nuclear program at Fordow, Natanz, and Isfahan. After that attack, we warned them never to resume their malicious pursuit of nuclear weapons, and we sought repeatedly to make a deal. We tried. They wanted to do it. They didn't want to do it. Again, they wanted to do it. They didn't want to do it. They didn't know what was happening. They just wanted to practice evil. But Iran refused, just as it has for decades and decades. They've rejected every opportunity to renounce their nuclear ambitions, and we can't take it anymore. Instead, they attempted to rebuild their nuclear program and to continue developing long-range missiles that can now threaten our very good friends and allies in Europe, our troops stationed overseas, and could soon reach the American homeland. Just imagine how emboldened this regime would be if they ever had and actually were armed with nuclear weapons as a means to deliver their message. For these reasons, the United States military is undertaking a massive and ongoing operation to prevent this very wicked, radical dictatorship from threatening America and our core national security interests. We are going to destroy their missiles and raise their missile industry to the ground. It will be totally, again, obliterated. We're going to annihilate their Navy. We're going to ensure that the region's terrorist proxies can no longer destabilize the region or the world and attack our forces and no longer use their IEDs or roadside bombs, as they are sometimes called, to so gravely wound and kill thousands and thousands of people, including many Americans. And we will ensure that Iran does not obtain a nuclear weapon. It's a very simple message. They will never have a nuclear weapon. This regime will soon learn that no one should challenge the strength and might of the United States Armed Forces. I built and rebuilt our military in my first administration, and there is no military on earth even close to its power, strength, or sophistication. My administration has taken every possible step to minimize the risk to U.S. personnel in the region. Even so, and I do not make this statement lightly, the Iranian regime seeks to kill. The lives of courageous American heroes may be lost, and we may have casualties. That often happens in war. But we're doing this not for now. We're doing this for the future, and it is a noble mission. We pray for every service member as they selflessly risk their lives to ensure that Americans and our children will never be threatened by a nuclear-armed Iran. We ask God to protect all of our heroes in harm's way, and we trust that, with his help, the men and women of the armed forces will prevail. We have the greatest in the world, and they will prevail. To the members of the Islamic Revolutionary Guard, the armed forces, and all of the police, I say tonight that you must lay down your weapons and have complete immunity, or, in the alternative, face certain death. So, lay down your arms. You will be treated fairly with total immunity, or you will face certain death. Finally, to the great, proud people of Iran, I say tonight that the hour of your freedom is at hand. Stay sheltered. Don't leave your home. It's very dangerous outside. Bombs will be dropping everywhere. When we are finished, take over your government. It will be yours to take. This will be probably your only chance for generations. For many years, you have asked for America's help, but you never got it. No president was willing to do what I am willing to do tonight. Now you have a president who is giving you what you want. So let's see how you respond. America is backing you with overwhelming strength and devastating force. Now is the time to seize control of your destiny and to unleash the prosperous and glorious future that is close within your reach. This is the moment for action. Do not let it pass. May God bless the brave men and women of America's armed forces. May God bless the United States of America. May God bless you all. Thank you.